Hello and welcome. Mention Caister-on-Sea to most people and they'll think of the seaside, or maybe a family holiday in one of the caravan camps around the area such as Haven, or maybe a trip to Great Yarmouth, which is only a few miles away. But did you know Caister actually has a very rich heritage going back to Roman times? Hence the village sign proclaiming Caister-on-Sea 2,000 years a village. The first evidence of a settlement dates from 200 AD when the Romans arrived. Caister means fortress in Latin, although books tell us it comes from the Roman word castre, meaning camp or fort. In this video, I'm moving away from my normal railway videos and I'm going to study the history of Caister using this heritage trail map. And if we take a closer look at the map, I'll show you where I should be going. We will be starting at the Never Turn Back public house. There it is there, very close to the seashore, and moving down Manor Road across the car park to the Lifeboat station. And then from there, past the ship in Tan Lane, moving along Tan Lane to the High Street, and then up the High Street to see various items of interest. Right up to the top end, to the War Memorial and the churchyard where there is the Lifeboat Memorial, and then across the road to the Holy Trinity Church, and finally finishing up at the Roman fortress in Norwich Road. Now I'll speak about all these items more in detail as I follow the heritage trail around the village. So let's make a start. So we start at the Never Turn Back public house, very close to the beach, which is on the right. This pub, built in 1957, is in the Art Deco and streamlined modern style, and that has earned it a Grade 2 listed status. The only pub in the country with this name, which relates to the motto of the Caister Lifeboat. More of that later on. And as we swing round, those bungalows are on the old Midland and Great Northern Joint Railway line from Yarmouth Beach, and those houses have been built where the old station was. That line opened in 1877 and closed in 1959. And as we pass the site of the old station on our right, we cross over Beach Road and into the car park, which leads us up to the Lifeboat station. In the 19th century, a group of fishermen formed a beach company whose purpose was to salvage vessels for money. This area around the coast had many sandbanks, and in winter storms combined with poor navigation, many ships came to grief. As an example, on the 27th of February 1836, in a great storm, 23 vessels were stranded on Yarmouth Beach. We must also take into account that the Norwich Mercury reported in 1838 that following a gale between 2,000 and 3,000 vessels were at anchor off Yarmouth. This is the new Caister Lifeboat station, or the newer one. It's recently been modernised with an upstairs balcony and cafe and a new gift shop. And here's a board on the side telling us of all the shouts that the lifeboat has had recently, and a bit of a description about what they actually had to do. This beach company that we were talking about also had a store and lookout, and in 1845 the first lifeboat came to Caister, transferred from Bacton. They've got a large area here and they get their lifeboats out. They have an all-weather seagoing one and an inshore one. That's the older lifeboat station on the right there. This lifeboat station was under the RNLI from 1857 to 1969, when it became one of only 3 independent stations in the country. The first lifeboat shed was actually built in 1887, not this one. That was further along, just a little bit further along the coast. And here's all the launches of the lifeboat since independence in 1969. Quite a record there. This is looking back at the newer one on the right, and this is the old one with a lookout at the top. And the original lifeboat station or shed was just further up in that direction, towards Great Yarmouth. This lifeboat station has recently taken delivery of an all-new weather 45-foot long Medina class lifeboat at a cost of around £1.6 million. So that gives you an idea of how popular and well thought of this lifeboat station is, because it's purely donations and it's run by volunteers only. Very impressive. And now looking across the from the lifeboat station towards Tan Lane in that direction. So moving across the car park from the lifeboat station, we enter Tan Lane, so named after the boiling of the fishing nets which took place in the village. Not far into Tan Lane we find the Ship Inn, built in 1815 as a refuge for mariners, basically a beer house. It was rebuilt in 1905 after being taken over by Lacon's, the local brewery, and we'll continue down Tan Lane. At the other end of Tan Lane, on the left there, is the back of the council hall, and we'll have a look at that in more detail in a minute. Caister at one time had numerous shops, including 3 shoe repairers, 3 fish and chip shops, a haberdashery shop, blacksmith, corn merchant, fruit and veg, hairdressers, butchers, bookstore, grocery, DIY and numerous others, and also some banks, I believe. And this is the front of the council hall. Here we are, the other side of the road. Built in 1912 as a unionist hall. After purchase by the parish council in 1927, it was renamed the council hall. Today it is still used by the parish council and many community groups. And this is inside, showing some of the structural work. It's got a stage, toilets, kitchen. Yes, it's used for all sorts of things. Right, now back outside, and we'll continue down the High Street in that direction. So we'll leave the council hall, which, as you can see, was also the community cinema at one point, and maybe still is, I'm not sure. Before we move on, here is a picture taken in 1932 of tramcar number 15 waiting outside the Arts and Crafts Style Council Hall, which was the actual terminus of the line from Great Yarmouth. And here's another picture taken from in front of the council hall across the junction, which was, as I said, the terminus of the tram route from Great Yarmouth. And this is what that same spot looks like now, taken from virtually the same position. And now we'll move on past the Gate public house there on our left, which in 1863 was known as the Green Gate Hotel. There were three other pubs as well, the Pig and Whistle and the Lord Nelson. And the King's Arms we shall see shortly. And let's move on down the High Street. I'll just freeze that shop a minute. To communicate with ships in the North Sea and the Cross Sands lightship, a Caister radio was established in 1901, and it was situated in a house called Pretoria Villa, which is now a private house, and that was on the right somewhere, just before the junction with Beach Road. And we shall now make a slight detour into Beach Road. Just inside Beach Road we find Sarah Martin's cottage. Sarah Martin was both a philanthropist and prison reformer. She was born in Caister in 1791 and died in 1843. She worked with the inmates of Toll House Jail in Great Yarmouth, giving lessons in reading and writing, and walking from Caister every day. She lived here in virtual poverty, and she is buried in the cemetery at Holy Trinity Church. And a little further along we find Caister Community Centre. Built in 1876, it was originally the village school. It became a community centre in the 1980s and is now a very popular social club. And now further along we're at the top of West Road, and if we swing round we see in front of us there the King's Arms public house. There has been a pub on that site since 1780, and the present building dates from 1935. And to the left of it is the old post office, which was opened in 1846. Later, the postmaster, John Blythe, placed a plaque on the wall facing the High Street. But the post office closed in 1912 and is now a private residence. Swinging round behind me is Caister House. This is a Grade 2 listed building dating from 1819. In its life, it has served as a private residence, rectory and surgery. It is now once again a private residence. Just a little bit further along we find the Old Hall Hotel, originally a residence with malt houses belonging to the Branford family. Built in the 18th century, it was also previously the centre for a caravan camp. It is now a spa, hotel and restaurant. And adjacent to the same road junction as the Old Hall Hotel, we find the Caister War Memorial. Like many war memorials throughout the country, this one, erected in 2019, remembers the fallen of Caister. Schools, parishioners and community groups all came together to make this possible. And a very lovely little war memorial it is. And well looked after as well. Now, adjacent to the war memorial is a small churchyard, and as I go along the path, at the end on the left is the Caister Lifeboat Memorial, which we'll have a look at in detail now. This memorial in this small cemetery remembers members of the Caister's lifeboat crew who lost their lives when in 1901 their lifeboat, the Beaucamp, I think it's pronounced, attempted to rescue a vessel in distress on the Barber Sands. Their boat capsized, and of 12 crew, 9 were lost. Paid for by donations, this memorial was erected in 1903 and in 2020 became protected by Grade 2 listed status. Up to the time of this disaster, the Beauchamp had been to the age of 81 vessels and saved 146 lives. But following this tragedy, it was withdrawn from service. The main part of the memorial, I'll get that right in a minute, represents the broken mast of the boat with knotted hawser and lifebelt. Although it was terrible weather at the time, it was said that going back is against the rules when we see distress signals like that. And this was translated by journalists to become the famous saying, "Caister men never turn back." We shall see more references to this disaster in the church. The road from Norwich to Great Yarmouth, indicated here, ran via Caister. In 1768 it became a turnpike from Norwich to a point called the Caister Causeway. That point was called the 2-Mile Stone and is approximately near where the co-op is now. So our next stop is at Holy Trinity Church. This was built in 1289. Other parts were added in the 14th century and the 15th century, and it was completely restored in 1894. This south porch was rebuilt in 1908, but other alterations have occurred throughout the years, notably with floor levels. And before we go in, we find the grave of Sarah Martin, the prison reformer who lived in Caister, and we have seen where she lived previously. And we go into the church now, and right in front of us on the north wall is this painting by the Yarmouth artist Ernest Childs, showing the Caister lifeboat Beauchamp saving the crew of a Scottish fishing boat. We have already seen the memorial in the other churchyard. The east window is another memorial to the victims of the Beauchamp disaster of 14th of November 1901. As you have probably realised by now, this disaster figures very prominently in Caister's history. The stone tracery of the window dates from the 15th century, and the glass in the upper part depicts St Edmund, King of East Anglia, in the 9th century on the left, and St Nicholas, patron saint of sailors and fishermen, on the right. Now let's move on to our last stopping point, the Roman fort. Our last port of call is the Roman fort. This is the remains of a fort situated at the time of its construction at the north of a large estuary, probably known as Garryannon. This fort and the one at Burr Castle and the one at Brancaster belong to a group of 11 military sites around the southeast coast of the Roman province of Britannia. The area that we shall see is about 10% of the whole fort. As you can see on this picture, the part at Caister is in the circle, but the rest of it has all disappeared, obviously, under modern housing. And the estuary came up fairly close, and there was a road from the harbour through the south gate, and we shall see part of that south gate in a minute. So here we are now entering the site, just a small area of what was once here. there's the foundation of the gatehouse, and as we walk through here, we'd be walking through the south gatehouse. We would have come up from the harbour, which was much closer than the sea is now. In fact, Caister would have been a lot of it underwater. And that's an information board to show us what the south gate looked like and the road through it. And there, just behind it, are the foundations, which we'll see in a minute. That's just to show where we are in relation to the main site. And there's the foundations of the south gate. Without this information board, you wouldn't really know what you were looking at. And the road would have gone in the direction that we're looking now. Just a cobbled main street of the town. Flint foundations to the left of the road are the remains of a hotel built about 175 AD. And then we are looking at basically rooms complete with a grain storage area. Now the town, of which this is the southwest corner, covered about 10 acres and was surrounded by a wall 10 feet thick by 15 feet high. Now, as I said before, 90% of the site is now covered by modern housing. It was mainly a civilian seaport concerned with the import and export of goods across the North Sea. That shows you the layout of the rooms. This is just a snapshot. Obviously, anybody who wants to know more, there are numerous books. There are numerous books in our local library on Caister and its history. And we shall see shortly how clever the Romans were. They built this fort on quite a high piece of ground. Well, high, considering it's Norfolk. And if I swing round there, you can actually see in the distance, we can see we're quite high up, but for obviously the modern house roofs. There we are. Well, that concludes our brief look at Caister-on-Sea's heritage trail. As can be seen from this video, the sea figures largely in its history. First with the Romans, then with fishing and the lifeboats, and most recently with the holiday industry. But even after 2,000 years, Caister still remains a closely knit village, even though it is still expanding. I just hope it still remains a village for another 2,000 years. Well, I hope you found this just a little bit interesting, and thanks for watching.